know thus far forth, by accident most strange, bountiful fortune, now, my dear lady, hath mine enemies brought to the shore. And by my prescience I find my zenith doth depend upon a most auspicious star, whose influence if now I court not but omit, my fortunes will ever after droop. Here, cease more questions. Thou art inclined to sleep. 'Tis a good dullness, and give it way. I know thou canst not choose. Hello. Welcome. Brian James here. This channel exists. Initially, it existed. Still, it exists. To discuss my relationship with Quentin Tarantino. Right? I wrote him a series of letters about playing a lead in the movie Critic. And when I didn't give him what he wanted, at a screening of Jackie Brown last year, he and the people around him entered into a covenant to compel me to lose my mind and blow my brains out. And while they failed to do the latter, right, in a big way, they have succeeded in the former. And I'd like to think that I'm wearing it well, right? But everything that he's done has been to be able to say, oh, see, look how crazy he is. I can't use him. That's, right, and that's, right, high evil, right? And that's not even the highest evil that they've done, right? So if we say that mind is the intellectual origin, if we say that mind is the origin of all life, right, then all of the things that they've done since April have come from my mind out of fear of what someone might do to kill me with their mind, right? And that's, right? That's as evil as it gets. It doesn't get any more evil than the things that I've talked about, right? That's in my letter, A Plea to the Pope, right? That it's high evil. It is a dangerous, hideous evil, right? That I would never do unless I have to, right? And so I've written a novelization of my experiences, and we actually finished reading through it yesterday. We've made a number of videos, and I've been almost terrified to look at the video where I read through the end of it, because I know what everyone's going to say. You know? As far as it's a lot, it's a lot, you know, it's a lot for sure. And so what I'm saying is that when you're listening to it, right, and you're hearing me discuss, right, diagrams, vision boards, right, screaming, it's funny now because we're still in the middle of it in a big way, you know, and no one knows, but right, that I did all of those things, right, out of necessity, not because I wanted to, but because I had to, right? That I let Quentin play his games and run amok in my mind for months on end, right? And then, right, around the first of the year, right, God the Father compelled me to turn it all around and say, this is the mind. This is the same mind that you thought you could play all these trifling games with, right? That I felt compelled to let them know that they were in my house. I was not in theirs. And that's still true now. Right? But it's not something I'm proud of, right? All those tactics, right? Which is only the first layer, right? The second layer and the third layer, those are all things that they stole from my mind and have pushed upon me, right? all again, right? Like it's a base tactic, right? It's all in an effort to make me seem insane. That they don't respect it so much, right? That they said, "Oh no, we'll do these things," and then he'll seem like even crazier, right? Never once considering, right, the ethical responsibility that's associated with wisdom, right? Because the things that I gave to them are actual real tactics that someone can use to destroy someone, right? And so it's all a game to him, right? It's all a sick joke, right? He's a sick, depraved man, right? He's not cool at all. If he was cool, right, then when I didn't give him what he wanted, right, he would have produced a non-disclosure agreement and said, there it is, you sign that, and you go fuck off anywhere else. Hollywood ain't for you. And that would have been perfectly reasonable. Then we could all say, oh yeah, like Quentin's cool. Right? That he doesn't, right? However, right, if he has a psychological complex, right, if he can't exist in the world knowing that there's someone who calls themselves an actor who doesn't bend to his psychic whim, right, then he's a megalomaniac, right? Then he's a depraved, weird, sad, angry man, right? And so that's what he's become, right? And so we went through the novel. What I'll say about the novel, right, is that ending is solid literary gold, right? That's everything that I'm looking for in a book, right? Where it just the tension, right? It's just like a Quentin Tarantino film, right? Where the tension is ratcheted up like all the way up to here, right? And that's where it ends, right? No resolution, right? Ambiguity, right? So, right? That's what it is now. Now it's incumbent upon me to go back through all of it again, right? And so that's like the middle chunk, right? I have to do all that first, and then I have to go through all of it again. And I'll do that as much or as little as I want. In the beginning of the novel, if you all remember, there are 3 essays. The first of which is called On Magic. The second of which is called On Time. The third of which is called On Number. On the highest levels of expression of this novel, there are 2 more essays. There's 5 essays in total, right? The first of which is on geometry. The second of which is on language, right? And so in mentioning language right now, we'll take a second to talk about the writing for a second, right? In the writing of those last pages, right, I made claims about seeing the Hebrew alphabet, right, considering the gematria value, and that's all legit. That's all 100% authorized, right? However, right, now that the dust has settled, right, that the fog is moved, like it's gone, I see through from A to B, right? What I have to say about that is that all of the instances of me seeing the Hebrew alphabet in my mind's eye, right, in meditative reverie, was Quentin and Daniela and the people around him poisoning my mind with bullshit because they didn't want me to actually see what is occurring, right? So, got me good. And you could say that about all the book, right? That all of it was a sick intellectual exercise to make me suffer. And I have a lot, like exponentially more than anyone else could have, right? Language is the ultimate cipher, right? It is a sublime expression of man's mind, which is tapped into, right, the communal mind of God, right? And so when man says, oh gosh, I need to, oh, there's the fucking pen, like, ah, right? When those things occur, right, it is a divinity that shapes our ends, right? Quote Hamlet, right? And so what I'm saying is that he poisoned my mind with bullshit that can in fact occur. That if you are a linguistic scholar, right, that if you are fluent in the 3 primary languages, right, language emerges from some divine potential hovering around man, right, that man has 2 things that are singular. Everything else is divided, bifurcated, right? In the brain, he has the pineal gland, however you want to pronounce that. And in the body, he has the mouth. He or she has the mouth. Right? Everything else is two hands, 2 nostrils, 2 lungs. Right? Oh, and in the chest, he has the heart. Right? That these are the singular expressions of God Almighty. Right? And so, on the highest levels of resonance, right? The heart beats, which compels the pineal gland to filter the thoughts of the divinity through it out of the mouth. Right? Even more so than writing, right? Because there's 2 hands. Right? And so again, right, Plato, Socrates, mystics and seers offer their divine prophecies with no inclination as to how their information comes to them. Right? And so what I'm saying is that I don't mean to sound like an arrogant ass right now, because Quentin is obviously a powerful man in terms of his psychic prowess. Right? That the things that he does, right? The pressure that he exerts upon actors in his films and people in his life, right, is a celestial effluvia that he has no direct reckoning with, that he doesn't understand anything about in a palpable way. Now, do I understand better than he does? I don't know. I would say yes, but then again, right, we're both arrogant assholes, aren't we? So, having said all of that, having said, I have 2 more essays that need to emerge out of, right, the celestial uncertainty, right, which is the same manner in which God creates all of creation, right, that now we're going to move into on geometry, right, which is a powerful talisman which could occupy someone's entire life, right? As far as understanding plane geometry, and the more that we go down this rabbit hole, the further that I will emerge, right? But for now, we're going to begin with this book, right? Spherical Models, Magnus Weiniger. Right? This is its own Bible. This is someone's Bible, as far as designers, architects, etc., etc. Right? So much of it is all pulled from Buckminster Fuller as well, right? But I have my first 2 models, right? We're going to go through the whole book, right? And I don't know how much of this will actually end up in the book, right? But it's a start, and it's a way to keep the channel going, right? Without being, right, bogged down in Quentin's evil upon me, right? My point is that Quentin possessed my mind and my body for so long, right? That he did everything that he could to compel me to put a bullet in my mouth, and he failed, right? And now, right, all that's left is evil. That's it. There's nothing, right? And so, right, we're gonna talk about it as much or as little as I want, right? But anytime I feel evil, I'm going to talk about it, right? And then we're going to move on, right? Because Quentin obviously is into his games, right? He has to exert power over people on the psychic landscape, right? And he stole his power over me, like he has it in some way. But in that way, right, I stole it from him in real time. So at the beginning of spherical models, you have first the cube and then the octahedron. And so that's what's on this piece of paper right here. Right? Beautiful diagrams. Right? So what I'll say before I jump into all of the ratios that are in this is that I bought these books however long ago and I cheated. Right? That it'll tell you the degrees and you know, it's like, oh, okay, it's like roughly that much. Right? But not this time. I did it all legit, all compass and straight edge. Right? And so the first one, which is this one, right, lines out the circular band, right, for a triangle that gives you a spherical cube, hexahedron, right? And the one below it, the spherical octahedron, which are duals of each other. This one, I'm pretty sure it works. I don't know. I'm not gonna say, oh no, I blew it. You know, because according to Quentin, I only did that with him. I think that this will work. It will put it together properly, but I'm not as confident as to the varying parts as to how it works, right? But this top one, right, there's a lot going on here, right? So the arc, it's over the top, right? This top arc, which is where the sides of the triangle all emerge, right, has a radius right there, which is the square root of 3, right? And so using that, right, you end up with a triangle, or you end up with a rectangle, which has side lengths of 1 and the square root of 2, right? So 1 square root of 2, 1 square root of 2. And the diagonal is the square root of 3. This is a powerfully mystic rectangle, right? It's worth its own lecture in that way, right? Bro, yeah, bro, fucking sacred geometry, bro, like, yeah, right? And that's all fine and dandy. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, if you take the compass and you make a flower of life with it and it resonates in your heart, like, who am I to say? But what I'm saying is that that's the first level. And this is the last level. Like, this is hardcore mathematics, right? And so through a process that I'm not going to rock you through all the way completely, right, you end up with 3 pieces, right? A spherical triangle. If I cut these out and fold them together, they're going to make a triangle, right? And so however many of these, there's 2 per side. This is like 60, like however many triangles, right? And then below here there's 48, right? And so this is all in Buckminster Fuller as well, the modules of Buckminster Fuller, right? So with the octahedron there's 48 B modules, right? And so if we say that this is 3 Pythagorean triangles, which it is, right, through the diagonal, and we say the side lengths are 1 square root of 2 square root of 3, right? That's right. This is a palpably divine mystery, right, in those 3. And so what I'll say is that I took the time to turn them into the squares, right? These are the squares, right? 1 square root of 2, right? Square root of 3, right? And so if you're playing with these things, right, of course the easiest thing to do is to turn this into 9 and turn this into 16, and then that becomes 25, right? But what I'm saying is that, like, on a more fundamental, abstract level, right, that this is these 2. 1 square root of 2 becomes the square root of 3, right? And so these are, right, the reason that there's a divine mystical connection here is because within this, right, which becomes its own form, right, is the first 3 geometric ratios, that any student learns in his understanding of the compass, right? All that's missing is pi. The first one is 1 to pi, right, where 1 is the diameter, the circumference is pi. The second one is 1 to root 2, where the side of the square is 1, the diagonal is root 2, right? And the third one is 1 to root 3, where the short diagonal is 1 on the vesica Pisces, the long diagonal is the square root of 3. And so the only drawing that I used to get that was this, right? No measurement. No measurement required, right? 1, square root of 2, square root of 3. Right? And so we're going to go through every single one of these models and put them together, right? And then that will help me in my quest, right? Though, right, of course, there's more to be said, to write my essay on geometry. So, I think I'm going to stop. I'm curious what everyone has to say about my pages. I know that anyone who reads them who doesn't understand anything, they would say, oh, it's just the ravings of a lunatic, and that's fine. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. We're all allowed our opinions, you know? But I can't stress this enough. Everything that I'm saying is true, right? Quentin is a powerful psychic clairvoyant who has spent all this time to compel me to eat a bullet so that he can have my scene for free, because it's the most badass scene anyone ever sent him. Now, this music that I'm about to play is the first piece that I sent to Quentin, because people told me for a long time that I should write music for Quentin Tarantino films. So, let me know what you think. See what's good in your life. Know that life is not an accident. All instances of clairvoyance is the mind of the adept tapping into the non-local conscious field which permeates all of space. The highest levels of said expression sees the adept behaving like God, right? You can heal the sick, right? And you can destroy far easier, right? That this game that he's playing at, he thought that malevolence was cool, right? He thought that evil was cool. And now we all know, right? That if you do these things, you're just a sick degenerate, right? Quentin Tarantino is not a cool guy, right? He has everything in the world, right? And he thinks that it's cooler to focus his energy and the people around him on destroying my mind. So, see what's good in your life. Uplift your soul to God. Like, comment, subscribe, share. God bless.